Chocolate!
Hello, and welcome back to yet another Off the Shelf. I forgot to do that the last couple episodes. I'm really bad at my own show. Also, quick notification, pretty soon, for those of you watching the series, I will have some Off the Shelf After Dark episodes up, where we cover some more R-rated manga and webcomics that are going to be age-restricted on the channel, and Nick Nack will not be joining me for. I will have other guests.
Yeah, it depends on what she's reviewing. There's a chance I could join her for something, but not likely.
Yeah, well, the first two things are going to be very gay, so...
I will not be there for those. You will see other guests on the channel that we've had on before. Maybe we can fish Realm out of retirement.
Maybe. But today's episode is actually a pretty interesting thing for me, one of my personal favorites. This is the first volume... the first volume of Accomplishments of a Duke's Daughter, or Tanashimi no Reijō something. There's a couple volumes. There's a couple with this very similar title, but with different, long form.
I read this. I got this from Seki today, and I read it today. Let me tell you, there is an episode of something going up on the channel. It should be up by the time this comes out.
Yeah, it will
with Vorn and Seki, where I make a brief cameo commenting over their excessive amounts of isekai and otome game reading on things on their reading list. Oh, yeah, I'm like, if I have to hear the word isekai, otome game, or villainess anytime today for the rest of the day, I'm going to snap someone's head off. And you know what?
Technically, you didn't have to hear it.
Turns around and hands me Accomplishments of a Duke's Daughter, an otome game isekai reincarnation story.
Hang on. You didn't technically have to hear it yet.
So, I'm gonna snap someone's head off.
No! You leave him alone!
I have killed your king.
No. I'm so sorry, Ozzy. Oh, little man. You're okay. You cruel bitch. You absolute asshole. Technically, you haven't had to hear any of those words yet. You read them. So this is actually the first volume of the Accomplishments of a Duke's Daughter manga series, of which there are 8 volumes out currently. I own the first 7. This is actually based originally on a web novel.
I noticed it was more wordy than the previous mangas I read today.
Yeah, so I do actually have the first 3 volumes of the web novel, and I do plan to buy more, but I figured that I would read the manga version with you for now, because we've been doing mostly manga with the exception of Elmaloy.
We did Elmaloy. We did 86 too.
Oh yeah, we did 86 too.
We do light novels here and there, but they have to be a little bit fewer and far between because they're a lot harder for me to just crack out.
Yeah, and I have less volumes, so if we wanted to continue it, I'd have to buy more to kind of keep up. So I figured I'd go with the manga first. Now, for me personally, I actually originally read this a long time ago. I actually read this before it was even out in English, either as a light novel or a manga. I read this online back when I first got into... This was like the first series I read after Otome Game Villainess. You know, Hamefura. And you got me into Hamefura.
Biggest mistake of my life.
You started this. So you do not get to complain. You started all of this. But yeah, it is an otome game, isekai. So she's born, basically, it's the standard plotline. She's born into the body of the pejorative villainess of the story. And she's not a villainess. She doesn't give a shit. Her fiance is kind of a dickwad and a moron, to be quite frank. She's better off without him.
But unlike, say, My Next Life as a Villainess, she is not brought in during the tender years of childhood. No. She's brought in the moment things go to shit for her.
Yeah, she reincarnates, during the ball, where
where she's like the final the climax of the Otome game.
Yeah. Which sucks because, you know, everything bad has already happened. She can't do anything to fix it in post. So basically she's essentially exiled from the capital, and kind of forced into confinement in her father's dukedom, you know, where her father basically tells her, go live out in the country, take care of the dukedom.
I feel like we saw something like this in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, probably something similar.
This is very Ramsay Bolton.
No. No. But basically she heads out, and because she has knowledge of the way this works, and she obviously has her own real world knowledge of the way that political and sort of economic systems work, she decides that she wants to make the dukedom kind of powerful in its own right, separated out from the government, and make sure that it is stable financially and militarily on its own, and can hold its own in the event of a war happening or something like that. And so she kind of begins to move. She creates her own company, and she starts slowly introducing techniques and stuff that she knows from the real world. Like she figures out how to cultivate cacao beans for chocolate.
That's really the only one we get here, because she just does chocolate here.
That's the first thing she figures out. She figures out how to cultivate what, you know, people think of as basically crap, right? Cacao beans. And to be honest, as someone who has had cacao beans and has had like a traditionally prepared cacao drink, I don't blame the people of this world for being like, because that shit is disgusting without the proper processing. It is bitter and nasty, and you need a whole lot of processing for that to be worth eating, to be quite frank. So, you know, good on her.
One thing we spend a significant amount of time on here that I actually quite appreciate with her character is we do establish very early on that despite the fact that she got incarnated into the villainess of this story, and she's not given much time to work all this out, like after incarnating, the previous villainess was not, outside of her horrible treatment of the main character of that Otome game, a terrible person. Because the previous villainess was the one bringing in all these like these people from the slums to help out in the mansion. Yeah,
to be honest, the only thing wrong with the previous villainess, Iris, was the fact that she was rude to the main character. And it's almost understandable in a way, because the main character is essentially stealing her fiancé, who she was in love with. Like, she was in love with this man. This was her life planned out, that she's been working towards already for the majority of her life. And this, you know, essentially girl just comes in and takes that all away from her.
And it's made pretty clear, unlike Katarina, who just hijacks the main character's body, that this is more of a combination of the main character and the villainess and our protagonist's minds.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I like this one, is because in a lot of ways she is a very smart character. Like, the villainess is not just stupid and mean.
Yeah.
She's smart. She knew what she was doing. She was bringing in people who would be useful to her as a future ruler of a kingdom, someone to build her base of power on. And in doing that, she endeared herself to a lot of supporting characters who would follow her, not the prince. Like, theoretically, they would have supported the prince had she married the prince, but shit went down, and they support her because she's the one. And he's kind of a fucking moron, to be quite frank. I like that. I do. I think it's a little bit of a... I like it more than the other trope in these, which is shitty person, someone reborn into their body, does like 3 nice things, and then all of a sudden everyone forgives them. I like it much better than that, because it's understandable.
I think there's a lot more meat here than the Katarina storyline in Villainous, which was, well, in one timeline she was a shitty person, but that doesn't really matter at all because she reincarnated to be a good person instead before this all went down.
Mm-hmm. Also, it's pretty nice to see her relationship with, like, the people working for her and even her parents. Like, it's very obvious that, like, her father loves her and that sort of thing, and she does have, like, a loving family and loyal servants who are very funny in their own right. Her maid is god tier.
Despite the decapitation of the King of Kings here, I did actually appreciate, at least I'm intrigued. This one has a good setup. I don't think we get enough into it for me to really say how much I like it, because we kind of only barely get the story started with this volume.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is, as I was reading this online, I actually read it up to a certain point online, and then I started buying the volumes in paper. And I think actually the point I got up to online was like volume 6 in the manga. So I actually didn't really get to read anything new till I got volume 7, and then I will be getting volume 8 soon.
What's fascinating here is, if I'm thinking of this in terms of what the light novel probably looks like, this cannot be volume 1 of the light novel all in itself. There is not much, like,
No, so
this feels like the introduction, the very first beats of that, what would be a volume 1.
Yeah, so what's interesting is the light novel has a lot more volumes out currently. Well, no, it doesn't have more volumes out, but they're much bigger and much longer. So you can actually see them up on my shelf, but the light novel volumes are actually roughly this big.
Was this a web novel before it was a light novel?
Oh, sorry, I mean web novel.
Okay.
I keep
Was
saying
it a web
light
novel that got released as a light
web
novel?
novel first.
Yeah. Then it got released as a light novel and then a manga.
Yeah.
So I have to imagine there's the light novel's probably bigger than average for light novels because it came from a web novel, and web novels can run a little bit more wordy in the introductory section than most
Give me
light novels.
2 seconds. Okay. So this is volume 1 of the novelization, as you can see. Bigger book, a little bit thicker, but not much.
Just skip to the end and tell me whether or not that's where it ends at in the light novel too.
Did her brother come in this volume?
No.
Ooh, Jesus.
They mentioned him, but she didn't come in.
Jesus. Did her mother come visit?
No.
Holy fuck.
We don't cover much at all with this first volume of the manga.
Oh. Does she create the corporation?
She announces she's creating the corporation.
Okay.
Whether or not Seki cuts this will be interesting, but where I guess you can get a little bit of the Seki reading through this experience, but we're like at our previous manga, I was like, this does not feel like it's all one episode for like a third or 2/3 of the manga. No. This manga feels like an episode 1 of an anime. Like, I can't imagine it being more than one episode, which is unusual for...
She does meet Maneda. The dude.
I believe so.
Okay.
The person who trades back and forth with the mainland.
Yeah. Okay, that's definitely... Oh, shit. Okay. So, the last line of the manga is page 88 of 244 in volume 1.
I fucking knew it.
So, like I said, I don't often keep track of where the books end because I'm just reading them. But yeah, so this entire thing covers just this little bit of volume 1 up to literally this line here where it says, and this is made from cacao. Yes, this just might do it. So, honestly, I'm fairly certain that the first volume of the novelization goes to like volume 3 of the manga. So, to be honest, we probably should have read this. It would have been much faster.
I wouldn't have been able to get this done today, though.
Yeah, but...
We do have another light novel coming.
That's definitely interesting. I had not realized that there was such a large disparity in the amount of content covered.
If you ever want to continue this, you might just want to take a look at where the next volume ends and where the light novel ends and decide whether or not you want me to just pick up the light novel and reread this section again.
But that is an interesting thing. So if you're interested in this story and you don't particularly care for reading it as a manga, the book moves a lot faster and is a relatively comparable price. They're only about $2 in difference between the novel and the manga. And there's a lot of both out. I think there's 6 volumes of this out as of January of 2023 and 8 volumes of this. And the 8 volumes does not cover, evidently, as much as the 6 volumes of this does. So this would be a very expedient way to read this whole series. You mentioned earlier that there was a lot more text in this.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain that outside of the stuff that's implied by visuals, pretty much every line of dialogue shown in here is written in here, which is why it's so dialogue.
Yeah, no, I don't mind it, but it's a different experience than if you're reading something like our last two, Get Backers or Frown, which are manga original.
Yeah. So, to be honest, that's interesting. In that case, we're definitely going to be continuing this on the channel, but I think...
Okay, you're good. You're good.
Okay, I clicked a button. And I think what's going to happen continuing it is I'm going to get you into the novel.
We're just going to jump over to volume 1 of the novel. We'll read
finish
that
it
and
out
then...
and keep going like that way. Yeah. That's really interesting, though. It's a good thing you pointed that out because I would not have realized that.
I almost want to say you should probably, at least while we have the manga, treat the manga like I did with the manga of Elmo when we read the first volume of Elmo. I'm like, this is the light novel, and then we'll just kind of flip through the manga just to get a look at what the art looks like.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that. I guess because I only have the first 3 volumes, I probably have as much of this as I do of the manga, just in a far more volumes of the manga, obviously. And I mean, it is nice to actually see what the characters look like and kind of get the art style. But then again, I mean, the author of the story is Rhea. The art is by someone entirely different, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, is the art that's in this the same as the manga, like the same artist? They look.
I believe so. Yes.
You can get that. It should be on the cover.
Yeah, it's not on the cover. Different illustrator.
Oh.
Which is interesting because the art style is ever so slightly different.
I see it.
It's sharper.
Yeah.
The artist who does the inserts for the manga has a much sharper and kind of more detailed style, but they can afford to because they're only doing like 8 or 9 drawings per volume, whereas this is every page. So obviously this would be simplified. Just for the sake of the way it's done. You can just tell in the front cover the complexity of like her dress between the 2 versions is entirely different. But I'm glad you enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I could have given you far worse things to read. So I'm glad this went over well because there definitely will be more of this type of thing on the channel going forward. Not a massive amount. I'm not going to be filling the channel with Isekai Otome games. But there are a lot.
That's what I said about Fate.
Then you filled the channel with Fate. But there are a lot of interesting books like this that I would like to read on the channel. So, going forward, you will see more of this. I don't know when, probably sometime this year, but no guarantees on a specific time in the schedule. That being said, if you've stuck around this far, our next episode is a return to Fate and the Nasuverse with more Elmaloy case files.
Case files are returning. And so here's something fun. Since our last time recording this, the translation has been completed for the Case Files series.
Yep.
So that's going to be fun to go through over the course of this year.
Yep. So with that being said, like, comment, subscribe, comment below if you have any suggestions for us. See you next time.